Alright, so now we're going to be going over a problem from Assignment 4, Equations Point Slope Form in Unit 3 in Algebra 2. So if you take a look at the board, you'll see one of the problems from the assignment. It's a line, and it goes through two specific points, which they show you using bullet points, and then they list the coordinates. Our job is to write the equation of the line in point-slope form, then in slope-intercept form that contains the points -2, 2 and 2, -2, and then use the box provided to show our work. So there's some formulas that we're going to need to use for this problem. The first is the slope formula, which I'm going to put up here. You should copy this down if you don't have it memorized. It's slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And the second formula is point slope form of a line, and it's y minus y1 equals slope x minus x1. And we're going to use both those formulas to solve this. So the first thing we want to find is the slope. Now, if I look at this line, I can see that the line is going down if I look at it from left to right. So I know right away that my slope is going to be negative. So when I solve this, I'm going to make sure that I get a negative slope. So let's see, I've got these 2 points to work with. And I've got to plug them into my slope formula, which I listed above, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is rise over run, the change in y's over the change in x. So when you have your 2 points, your first point, you can label that as x1 and y1. It's the x coordinate of your first point and the y coordinate of your first point. And your second point, x2, y2. And I like to label it over top of the problem so I know what to plug in for what in the formula. Okay, so y2 minus y1 is going to be y2 minus y1, which is -2 minus 2, over x2 minus x1, which is 2 minus -2. Okay, so that's what it looks like when I plug in x1, y1, and x2, y2. So now I have to simplify. -2 minus -2 is -4, and 2 minus -2 is 2 plus 2, because when you subtract a negative, it turns into a positive, which is +4. So -4 over +4 is -1. And my slope is a negative, which I knew that it had to be, so it's good that it worked out to being a negative. That means I didn't make any mistakes. Now let's take a look at the line and see if -1 looks like a correct slope for the line that we were given. If I pick a point and I go down 1 over 1, I get to my next point. And again, down 1 over 1. So it looks like a slope of -1 really does work out as my rise over run when I look at my line. So now I'm going to erase this work here so I have room, but I'm going to put m equals -1 so I don't forget. So my slope is -1. So that's my first step in solving this problem, but I still have a lot left to do. I still have to write the equation of the line in point slope form. So that means I'm going to have to use my point slope formula. So let me copy that down now. So now I know what gets plugged in for m. Oh, I wrote m wrong. It was supposed to be -1. When we solved it, we got -1, not -4. Don't know why I wrote that. Okay, so I know that I'm going to be plugging in -1 for m. And I can pick either point to use, and I'll just use this first point here for my x1 and my y1. So y minus y1 is going to be y minus 2, because 2 is my y1. X minus x1, well, x1, I have to choose just one point, so the point I chose has an x1 of -2, so that would be x minus -2, but we know that when we do subtracting a negative, we know that's a positive, so I'll go ahead and I'll change that to addition. So this here is my answer in point slope form. So part 1, point slope form is y minus 2 equals -1 parentheses x plus 2. And that's part A. That's your first answer. That's in point slope form. So you want to copy this down and type this into the text box for part 1. Now part 2 says put that equation in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is when y is isolated, so you have to solve for y. Okay, so let's do that. When solving for y, the first thing you want to do is distribute the -1. So that would be y minus 2 equals -1x minus 2. And the last thing you want to do to solve for y is add 2 to both sides. So that's going to leave you with y equals -x plus 0. So I'm not going to write plus 0, I'm just going to say y equals -x. So your part B in slope-intercept form is y equals -x. And notice that it's technically -x plus 0, so that means 0 is the y-intercept, and if you look at the line, you can see that 0 really is the y-intercept, so we know that our answer looks correct.